Steam. It takes a great deal of energy to convert water into steam. But that energy is not lost. It is carried in steam and is released when the steam turns back into water. In practice, the energy is released as heat and is transferred with formidable speed whenever the steam meets a colder surface. Quite simply, steam is an extremely efficient carrier of pure heat energy. It's versatile, safe, and completely sterile. A truly modern energy media with a performance to meet the stringent demands of countless industries throughout the world. Until recent years, the need for sophisticated boiler control systems wasn't fully appreciated. It was often wrongly assumed that because the water in the gauge glass was calm and steady, the same was probably true for the water movement inside the boiler. But Spirax-Sarco knew otherwise. Spirax-Sarco has taken some remarkable video footage which sheds light on the mysterious inner world of boiler operation. A special viewing point, mounted on the back of a typical modern industrial boiler, enabled the conditions inside to be filmed, while the boiler was put through a series of carefully controlled tests. The result is an extraordinary visual catalogue of events only ever seen by a privileged few. Until now. But to fully appreciate this, we must first go back to basics. The basic principle behind boiler operation is relatively simple. Water is heated by a burner and steam is produced. As the water is evaporated, the level will naturally fall and fresh water must be pumped in to keep the level topped up. The water level can also be extremely sensitive to changing circumstances, such as increased steam demand. The primary purpose of boiler control systems is to make sure that the water level stays between upper and lower limits. If it falls too low, the heating surfaces could become exposed and the boiler would overheat. Too high, and the water could be sucked into the steam takeoff point, leading to poor quality steam and carryover. The compact design of modern boilers means that this operating band is very narrow, so accurate control has become increasingly important for safe and efficient operation. To be able to control the water level in a boiler, you must first be able to measure it. But what exactly is meant by water level in conditions like this? Even at low steady steam generation rates, when conditions are most stable, there's still considerable water movement and significant turbulence. When we talk about the level of still water, it is very clear what we are referring to. However, when the water is brought to the boil, bubbles of steam begin to occupy some of the water space, causing the overall level to rise, even though the amount of water hasn't changed. The more vigorous the boiling, the higher the level becomes. The upper surface consists almost entirely of large bursting bubbles, and inside a boiler, the thickness of this bubble layer can vary depending on the circumstances. Level gauges aim to measure the level of the top of the boiling water, just below the bubble layer, where the water-to-bubble ratio is fairly representative of much of the boiler, and this is the level you see in the gauge glass. A gauge glass achieves this by providing a protected zone directly connected to the main boiler water, but free from turbulence and bubbles. Similarly, level probes installed inside the boiler must be in protection tubes. Accurate, reliable level probes are essential for both safety and precise boiler level control. Water must be fed into a boiler to replace the water which has been converted to steam. A common method of achieving this is known as on-off level control. When water level falls to a predetermined point, the feed pump switches on and fills the boiler to the required level, and so the cycle is repeated. It's fairly simple to implement, but it does disturb the delicate balance inside the boiler. This can best be demonstrated by comparing the situation to that of a container of boiling water, which is producing a steady rate of steam to the atmosphere. Suddenly adding an amount of cold water has a dramatic effect. It immediately lowers the water temperature and suppresses the boiling rate. Consequently, the steam production rate has dropped and cannot resume until all of the water has been brought back up to its boiling point. This is a disadvantage with on-off level control. These same effects can be seen in the boiler, but because they happen over a longer timescale, they are less apparent. Time-lapse photography provides a clearer picture of events. As soon as the feed pump switches on, the boiling rate becomes suppressed and the level falls. When the pump switches off, the boiling rate slowly recovers and the level continues to rise above the pump-off position due to the reappearance of normal steam bubbles. Notice how a mist forms just after the feed pump switches on. This is because steam is recondensing in the steam space due to the sudden lowering of the water temperature. The mist disappears soon after the feed pump switches off as the temperature begins to rise. So with on-off control, not only does the water level continue to rise and fall, but so too does the steam output rate. These effects can be reduced by preheating the feed water. The higher the temperature, the quicker the boiling rate can recover. Higher temperature feed water also reduces the need for oxygen scavenging chemicals. A far better method of water replenishment is to have a continuous but variable feed of preheated water to keep the boiler running in equilibrium. By carefully altering the feed rate to match any change in steam demand, the level is maintained at the optimum position with little fluctuation. In a boiler, this is known as modulating control. The result is a steady flow of steam and a balanced boiler ready to respond to changing demands. If you compare a boiler running at 8 bar and 3.5 bar, but under the same load, you can see that the low-pressure operation is far more turbulent, with water splashing toward the steam takeoff. This is because steam bubbles are larger. Lower pressure and larger bubbles cause more turbulence as they break the surface. Low-pressure operation is obviously less stable, and there is more chance of water droplets contaminating the quality of steam when the water level is at a high point. So, if low-pressure steam is required, it's far better to run the boiler at normal high pressure and step it down at the point of application using a pressure-reducing valve. All of the tests so far have been conducted in almost ideal conditions with a steady light steam load. However, in reality, steam demand is rarely steady. It comes in peaks and troughs, and the boiler must be able to respond to these changes. Whenever the steam demand increases, it will take a little time for the boiler to realize its output to match the new demand. However, during this transition period, more steam is being used by the plant than the boiler is producing, so the total amount of steam in the system falls, which causes the pressure in the system to drop. Falling pressure has a major effect inside the boiler. Watch as the steam demand is temporarily increased, but within the boiler's maximum output capability. The bubbling water surface begins to rise with surprising speed, and within a few seconds, the level is so high that water and foam are being drawn into the steam takeoff. As soon as the high demand moderates, the pressure rises and the surface level quickly returns as normal operations re-establish. This sudden response, often referred to as swell, is a result of two compounding factors. 1. The steam bubbles within the main boiler water expand under the reduced pressure, causing the surface level to rise. And 2. At the same time, water flashes as steam, resulting in more turbulence. Flash steam occurs whenever there is a lowering of pressure. If you had a vessel containing high-pressure water just below its boiling point and opened a valve to lower the pressure, some of the water would spontaneously change to steam, without any heat being supplied. Closing the valve would enable the pressure to build up and the flashing would stop, but there would obviously be less water left in the vessel. The temporary formation of flash steam is the normal mechanism in which a boiler copes with an increase in demand. but it's important to realise that steam demand should be increased gradually, because it's the rate of increase that causes a boiler to become unstable, even if the high demand is well within the boiler's output range. If the steam demand is increased beyond the limit of the boiler's maximum steam generation rate, even for a very short time, problems can occur with both carryover and low boiler water level. In fact, it's not uncommon for a boiler to shut down when overloaded due to the low-level alarm operating. To explain this, watch what happens when the steam demand is gradually increased to just 15% above the boiler's maximum rated output. As expected, the drop in pressure is causing the bubble surface to rise, and the conditions are becoming more turbulent due to the formation of flash steam. Water is soon drawn into the steam takeoff, but this time without the demand moderated. The turbulent bubble level continues to rise, swamping the camera pod, leading to near-continuous carryover. None of this is apparent in the gauge glass or the protection tube, because they are measuring virtually bubble-free water, and the water at the top of the boiler consists mainly of steam bubbles. The measured levels begin to fall as water continuously flashes into steam in the boiler's attempt to satisfy the excessive demand. Eventually, the first low-level alarm is triggered. This shuts down the burner, and the bubble-charged water drops very rapidly. It soon becomes apparent how little water is left in the boiler. So little, in fact, that the stay bars become exposed. This demonstrates just how important it is to keep a boiler operating within its design parameters and the need for reliable, accurate level probes. Water contains chemical salts in solutions called dissolved solids. These cannot be converted to steam, so when water is boiled, they remain behind and form a residue. This process happens continuously. Whenever a boiler is producing steam, and without some sort of control, the concentration of dissolved solids would rise to an unacceptable level, the consequences of which can be seen in the following demonstration. Here, the TDS control system was disabled, and the TDS level has been allowed to rise to almost double its normal operational level. Boiler pressure is a fairly normal 8 bar at this point, with a moderate steady load. At first sight, things don't look too bad. The bubbles at the water's surface have a foamy, creamy appearance, and the surface is calmer than normal. This is not surprising, because high TDS levels cause the physical behavior of bubbles to change. They become more stable and take much longer to burst, which results in foam. What's not so apparent is that the actual boiling water level, as measured by a level probe, is not where you would expect it to be. It is in fact much lower, because the layer of foaming bubbles is substantially thicker than with normal TDS. This reduces the effective steam room within the boiler and leaves it vulnerable to carryover even when the underlying water level is within normal operating limits. This is particularly so when the water rises to a high level, such as the top of the feed pump cycle, or in response to an increase in demand. Fortunately, these problems can be easily avoided by using appropriate means of TDS control. The water levels in a boiler need to be kept within a very narrow operating band. Too high leads to carryover. Too low, and the low water level alarm will shut down the boiler. And as we have seen, many factors can affect this balance. Even at moderate steady loads, feed pump on-off operation causes a boiling rate to be suppressed, followed by a swell, which takes the level above the pump-off level. An increase in demand also produces sudden level fluctuations. Furthermore, these effects will compound to produce even larger fluctuations if the circumstances occur together. We have also seen how high TDS levels produce a thick foam layer on the boiler water, leading to carryover at much lower steam demand than normal. A boiler fitted with sophisticated controls, such as modulating feed water and automatic TDS controls, will minimize these effects and keep the boiler operating at optimum levels. The boiler is ready to respond to the change in demand and the circumstances placed upon it in everyday industrial use, whilst continuing to produce good quality steam. If you combine all this with the latest generation of reliable, self-checking low and high level alarms, it is possible to operate boilers fully automatically and with considerably reduced supervision.